Welcome to the Improvement Nerds Podcast, where we host conversations about the things that nerd us out with one goal in mind: sharing best practices and sharing techniques and tools that allow us to make lasting change. In each episode, we'll feature a different idea and hopefully through that episode give you a set of new tools, new skills, and new thinking that'll allow you to change how you do your work, how you lead others, and how you show up in your life. We're so excited that you've chosen to nerd out with us. We hope that these episodes are exactly the things that you need to hear in order to get started in making the improvements that you want to see happen in the world. If these episodes speak to you, please subscribe to our podcast, like what we're doing, and leave a comment. Happy spring, improvement nerds. Excited to be coming back and having another episode with a guest you're very familiar with. If you didn't sense in episode 40 that Mary and I had a lot more nerding out to do, and towards the end we wanted to keep going, but out of respect of your time and also trying to keep things less than 75 minutes per episode, we wrapped it up quick. And then in our follow-up with each other, we continued the conversation, and we just both looked at each other and said, there's so much more juicy stuff that we have to get to. Let's consider another episode. And as such, we're now producing this bonus episode. And I'm so excited to have the chance to nerd out with you again, Mary.
Thank you. Great to be here, Tom. Happy Monday.
Yeah. So it's Monday. Thank you. After the spring ahead, moving the clocks forward. So, but I saw you had a big cup of coffee. And
yep.
I've got a cup of coffee.
Yes.
And it's
ready for more.
Yeah, it's ready for more coffee. It's fueling this episode. So in the previous episode 40, I'd encourage our listeners to go check that one out. You gave us your introduction, and we don't have to rehash all that. If people want to know more about you, they need to go back and check out 40. So I think for fun, let's do an icebreaker as our introduction. And I wouldn't ask you to do something I wasn't willing to do myself. So our icebreaker is going to be 2 truths in a story. And I'm sure you facilitate teams, so you know this game, but maybe our audience doesn't. So do you want to give us a quick elevator speech on what this game is?
All right. So you need to figure out, of the 3 things I'm about to tell you, which 2 are true and which one is not so true. So I've got 3 quick stories for you, Tom, and you tell me which one you think isn't true. So one is, when I was in college, I went on vacation in Hawaii, and my friends convinced me to go skydiving. So that is my first story. My second story is I was on the soccer team in high school. I actually played soccer all through high school, and I was very athletic. You would never believe me probably, but that's my second story. And my third story is more recently, when I was in Costa Rica on vacation, somehow managed to have a driver who was like drinking the whole way that we were going on an excursion. And we got into a car accident. Yeah. So what do you think of my stories?
Well, one, I like that you wrote them down, because I couldn't see, if you were doing the thinking, like you should be in acting. Like that should have been another one on here. It's like you had stage presence, or you were in theatrics at one point, because it was hard I was looking for it. I'm like, where's her show?
Right.
And I didn't see on.
Pretty good poker face I have, right?
So I'm going to guess you did play soccer.
Okay.
And you did go to Costa Rica, but there was no way in heck your friends could ever convince you to jump out of a plane.
How did you know that?
I don't know. I was just trying to think, like, there's so many things. There's so many things to do in Hawaii that, like, maybe you were in a helicopter and you flew over the volcano. So you were up and you did do something scary around, like, your fear of heights, but you weren't going to take it that next step forward and jump.
Well, you were totally right. I have like an incredible fear of heights, and I would never, for $1 million, I would never jump out of a plane.
I wouldn't either. When you went to Hawaii, did you go and tour some of the volcanoes and do a helicopter flyover? Yeah, I we went near the Grand Canyon, and it was an option to do a flyover, and I chickened out. I couldn't do it.
It's
I didn't.
unnecessary. You can see it from the ground.
I don't even like to see it from the ground because the handrails, like they need some updating. Um,
The jiggly, yeah,
yeah,
the what gets me is those like lookouts where the floor is glass.
no, thank you.
Why? Why is that necessary? It's unnecessary.
I saw the billboards for that experience at the Grand Canyon, and it gave me anxiety.
Yeah.
As I'm getting older, my fear of heights is turning me into a complete chicken. But
Yes.
do you like do you like roller coasters?
I did not used to like roller coasters. I have gotten a little bit better, um, just by, sheer like peer pressure. But I think like is a strong word.
I've One of my favorite rides is the Tower of Terror at the Disney park down in
Yeah.
Orlando, and I just think it terrifies me. But after I get off that ride, I would just have so much energy.
Yeah.
Um, like I don't
Still
get it.
alive.
Yeah. All right. So I suppose I'll do my two truths and a story, and I'm going to read from a piece of paper too, so that you don't get any benefit.
Okay.
So my first story is I'm a two-time Ironman athlete in 2 weeks. So I did one, and they altered the course, and I was like, that counts, but I want to do the whole thing and get my money's worth, suppose, or get my suffering in. So I did another one 2 weeks later.
Okay.
Um, we're raising twins that are identical and mirrored twins. And despite that, they're complete opposites. Although they look identical, and I still struggle to tell them apart. Their behaviors are very unique. They are. It's so interesting. One is kind of snappy and a little attitude, and the other one is just like a teddy bear. And
Okay.
then my last story is that my name was bet on the Super Bowl. So the family name, there was a lot of Thomases, and there's even Tomes. And my mom wanted me to be called Justin, and my dad wanted me to be called Thomas. So they bet my name on the Super Bowl, what one would be my legal name,
Wow.
and that was that.
Okay. I feel like you would do the Iron Man thing twice in 2 weeks. Yeah.
It wasn't my doing. I didn't want to do Iron Man to start with, but my wife is a monster, and she
Okay.
had already done one, and all my friends were like, "Are you going to do one too?" And then my college roommate,
No
um,
pressure.
yeah, my college roommate, he added to it. He said, "I'm doing it. I want you to really think about doing it with me. I think it would be an awesome experience." And I'm glad I did it. I'm amazed I was capable of doing it. And
It's amazing what we're capable of. Okay. Well, so that's a truth. I know you're raising twins. And
but
I,
are
I
they mirrored?
maybe not. But I know the personality things are true. Um I'm gonna say that your parents did bet on the Super Bowl on your name. They
Yes.
did.
Yeah, they did.
Those are all really good stories.
They actually, my mom called me Boo Boo until,
No.
yeah, until I was like 7, and I thought it was because I was accident prone, and I asked her, and she's like, "No, sweetie." So like, bet on my name. My nickname was Boo Boo. I'm like, what is going on? Right, being a child of the '80s was hard work, I'll tell you.
Double nicknames are the best though.
I know.
Like everyone in my family had them, like the double nicknames. And if you didn't have a double nickname, there was like a lack of affection there.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
just
that
Sign of love, their love for you.
Carolyn has nicknames for all of our boys. There's like Hagen Tom, Katie Bug, and Rosie Rooster. So yeah, the twins. We when we found out we wanted twins, we're like, please don't let them be girls. Although I would have been happy with a healthy child either way. And because she wanted girls but didn't want girls, like their nicknames are girl names. So there's Katie, and which a lot of people, if your name's Catherine or Kathy, also Katie's in the mix. And then Rowan is Rosie. So, and she's like, well, do you think they're going to get beat up in school? I'm like, hey, the rule in school is you don't mess with twins. Like every boy knows you don't ever pick a fight because there's two of them. So they'll be just fine.
They're going to lose.
And they're monsters. They weigh they now weigh more than our 7-year-old.
That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive.
Because twins are normally small, but these guys and they both want you. They're like, carry us because they like to be carried at the same time.
Yeah,
that worked like 2 years ago, but
it's even harder for me with my baby and then my 4-year-old who suddenly wants to be carried. I don't think that our bodies are designed to carry 4-year-olds, at least not mine. So, but I've had to do it to avoid double meltdowns a couple of times. So yeah, I felt like an Iron Man when I did.
I bet. There's solutions. There's like hiking backpacks and baby Bjorn. So like you could put one in a backpack and then you could put one in the Bjorn.
Oh, that's smart.
That'll definitely up your status.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah, instead of going in the gym and getting in your spinning class, you can just start toting around your children in a backpack.
Right. And then it can be like a competition sport, like we can see, you'll see like parents running this race with like a 7-year-old strapped to their back and like.
Isn't that one of those unique sports where maybe overseas it's like old logging sport, and it's like has the gentleman carry your wife and like they're on your back and you got to jump over logs, you got to wade through water. So I think we could do the stateside version, and it's
right. I like that.
Children.
And then you'd have to like starve your children as part of the preparation for the event.
Yes. So
they need to be as light as possible.
Yeah, like they go through a fasting regimen.
Right.
Like lean and mean.
Mine is already on that, by the way. She doesn't like anything to eat except cookies, so we'll just take away the cookies.
Yeah.
She'll be fine.
Our kids live off of corn dogs.
Oh, that works.
Yeah. And has a person who likes efficiency, like waiting for an oven to preheat and all that. Like there was just too much production in giving them their favorite meal. So we invested in a countertop air fryer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's economies right there. Nice. I don't even know the last time I turned on my oven.
Corn dog in 30 seconds.
Yeah. It's pretty foolproof too. So there's some poka yoke in regards to
good parenting hacks.
Mm-hmm.
A whole podcast on that.
Yeah, we could, but you're right. We promised at the kickoff. We promised people we were going to revisit Leadership Speech Act. So I suppose we should get to that because there's things that we want to offer that I think complement our previous conversation. So let's remind people of our previous conversation, what we talked about in episode 40, the Leadership Speech Acts.
Yes. So I think we got really jazzed up in talking about the power that we all have, regardless of where you are, what you do, what your title is. We all have this incredible power invested in us in the words that we say in our speech. What we say and how we say it can bring together a vision or a dream that we have for tomorrow into a reality that otherwise may have not existed. And I mean this on the most fundamental way. I think the example that I gave in the last podcast was as simple as, wanting the trash to be taken out and having a tomorrow where the trash can was clean and empty, and the basic act of using my speech in a way to motivate and inspire my husband to take the trash out. So I get really jazzed about this topic, and I think we could talk about this for hours about different strategies and how we can use our speech to create that vision and make that vision become a reality.
I remember, we had talked about it from a personal and a professional perspective, right? So shaping your vision for your household or your family or even for your organization, these tools help you to convey and inspire and connect and get collaboration where otherwise there would have been confusion. So the leadership speech acts are very powerful. And you talked about taking out the garbage, but leadership speech acts, as they showcase or they educate people on them, sometimes they reflect to how they've been used in our past and our history and our major accomplishments. So is there any, like in your development, any one leadership speech act, a thought leader that said something you're like, yes, that's it. I want to be like that.
There are many. That's a great question. I think like the person that motivates me the most on this topic is definitely one of my mentors, Dennis. Dennis Wagner is a like machine when it comes to having this toolbox of speech acts in his, in his hands and using them with system and method, as he would say. He is just such a great example. And there's actually a book that I really like. It's called Language and the Pursuit of Leadership Excellence. They do such a nice job of describing these tools in a really compelling way. It's a really beautiful and easy read. I love that book. It's one of my favorites. So I would highly recommend that book.
Yeah. So that it was, repeat that title one more time for those who.
It's called Language and the Pursuit of Leadership Excellence. It's pretty easy to find. I think I bought an electronic copy on Amazon. It's such a nice read. It's such a great read. And there's plenty of other good books, I think, on the topic of speech acts, but this is probably one of my favorites.
Great. Is it one you could read on a plane ride, or is it more like a weekend versus?
I would do it in like maybe 2 or 3 sittings. But it's also something that I've gone back and reread certain sections. So it's like a nice book to kind of keep handy on your desk kind of thing. So you can refer back to it.
Awesome. I love
Yeah.
books like that. I have.
Wait, plane rides? What plane rides?
Yeah. And, back in the day when you would travel and do public speaking and whatnot, I was reading a lot of books when I was traveling because I would open them up and read on the plane and jot
Yeah.
notes in it. And that was really my time, was when I was in the air. And now I kind of
Yeah.
miss it, reading and not having interruption, because I'm not a very strong reader. So I need complete silence.
Yeah.
And a plane what kind of gave me that. Put my
Yes.
headphones in, and people would,
No distractions.
yeah, they would respect, like, that guy's in his nerd bubble, just let him be.
You can also check out, well, I guess you're like me, you work from home, but we don't have the benefit of a commute into the office. But I used to get a lot of reading done in the car with like audiobooks. Pretty sure there's an audio version of this book too. So people can check that out too.
Yeah, great. So we unpacked, we don't have to hit all 4 of them. There was key topics we hit on. And
Yep.
so for those people who, need to be reminded of those, what were some of the big rocks of our previous conversation? So one of the key speech acts is creating or setting forward a declaration. So that's kind of like casting or shaping your vision and putting it out in the universe.
Right, exactly. So declarations are very powerful when you acknowledge or state kind of a truth and you bring people together around that declaration. It can be very, what's the word I'm looking for? like bringing a bunch of people together under the premise of a declaration. So it can be very unifying in bringing people together. It's very powerful. We also talked about requests and offers. This is, I think, so basic and yet so critical, where we're looking for what is it that I can offer to others that would be useful to them in achieving their mission and their purpose and getting something that they want and making those offers, but also making requests so that together we are supporting each other, leaning on each other, and hopefully accomplishing a unified aim as well. So we're working together in a system, as a system, in requesting and offering and securing commitments really to generate results. It can be extremely powerful.
Yeah, that's the compounding effect of and growing one's relationship and strengthening trust, right? Like the initial request and offer, especially if it's two people working together for the first time, may feel
Mhm.
a little awkward and there's some uncertainty, and the two individuals are going through that formation process. So, there's storming and a little bit of conflict that's probably going to happen. But on the other side of that, when they both fulfill those obligations, the outcome is often strengthening of their bond and stronger relationship and stronger trust. And now
Mhm.
those two based on that trust in each other, and they're now more capable and can go after more complex change or
Right.
take more significant risk.
Yes, take on a bigger challenge. And it really speaks to like what is better, right? That one person who might have an incredible vision and has to figure out how to do that on their own, or being able to mobilize a team of people, a group, like obviously that's way more powerful. You've got more horsepower there. Well, I guess it wouldn't be horsepower, but you've
Human
got more
power.
energy, people power. Yeah. So, like, that's, getting that trust, earning that trust, establishing that is huge. And it's also really important in getting buy in so that you can work together to accomplish, again, whatever that aim might be.
I love it. And once people unite and work together successfully, don't underestimate or take it for granted that that person knows that they're appreciated, right? So one of the last components of the speech act is that element of gratitude and bringing
Yes.
it full circle to
Recognition, acknowledgement, absolutely, so important. And it's like you said, to continue to lay the groundwork for more and more and more. So that is really critical. And that actually is a nice a, like transition to one of the things we wanted to talk about today, which is this concept. So these aren't officially speech acts, just to be clear. These are all things like bits and pieces of strategies that I've been exposed to or read and kind of put into this collection of ways that we can use our speech to motivate and inspire change. And so one of them is the yes and strategy. Have you heard of like yes and, Tom?
I
Have you heard of
have,
it?
and one of my they've been on the podcast before, doing a couple of episodes with me. And the very close collaborator, LP, when we worked together in healthcare, the improv rules were things that she was really passionate about. So when we would facilitate teams and we would do kickoffs, she would play some improv games as part of the icebreaker. And one of the ground rules she would create for teams was the concept of yes and. She would, every time, it would be a post-it note that she has a facilitator or an influencer. She maybe sometimes gets someone else on the team, like at the tables doing the work to suggest it, and it's very powerful. um,
Yes,
i
it is.
I've seen it in action. I've seen how it helps teams and individuals feel safe in suggesting ideas. So I
Yeah,
can't wait to go a little
absolutely.
bit deeper on that one.
Yeah.
What else do we have? So we've got yes and. Let's kind of unpack them,
Okay, so you want to
and then
unpack. So yes, and I want to talk more about that. And then this concept of effective questions So your lean people will probably be like, yeah, I got that down on lockdown, lockdown on effective questions. But I wanted to just, talk quickly about that. One of my favorites is the loose tight. And you've probably heard of this one too. Also choice, the power of choice. And then the last one is assuming positive intent.
Oh man. So we'd already kind of put a disclaimer, and I'm going to do it again. Is our previous episode, those 4 that we nerded out about are classified as leadership speech acts. The authorities on that topic, those are the walls are around those 4 things. Those are classified as speech acts. So we're not trying to blur that line. We're saying do those, and then also consider these other effective leadership strategies, which
Right.
also leverage your language and your speech to empower others, to shape a vision, to mobilize commitment and achieve things we probably wouldn't have been able to have accomplished had we not shaped those
Absolutely.
things through our words. So
Yeah.
these what do we have here? 5, 6? I can't 5.
5. Yep. Yep.
5 more tools
Mhm.
to put in people's toolboxes today. I can't
Yes.
wait.
Fill them up.
Let's
Let's do
fill
it.
them up. Yeah. All right. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with yes and.
Okay, let's. Tell me
The
more
reason
about yes and.
Okay, I love this because it's a challenge for me. Like, I am the kind of person that if I have a certain idea or an approach that I think we need to take to get somewhere, and someone else pipes in and has something else to say, it's so easy for me to just shut it down and say, "Well, that's nice, but," and I am always using the word but, like that's great, but you're not seeing the light here. So this one is just a personal challenge. And I think that's why it's one of my favorites because when you have to say yes and it forces me to acknowledge some merit in that person's idea, some perspective that they bring to the table, some angle in what they said that's not covered in the way I might be seeing it. And I think the beauty in that, I mean, it sounds really PC, but like the beauty is that if I can really truly get to a yes and mentality, that's actually going to increase my likelihood of success because now I have more buy-in, right? Like if you and I are brainstorming about something and elements of your ideas are thoroughly incorporated into our final product, you are way more likely to like that final product because you contributed to it. So there's buy-in there. So this concept of yes and is like transformational because it's a challenge to really be able to change an approach so that others people's contributions and ideas are genuinely reflected in the final product. And I can give some personal stories like um, I was once working on a team where there was somebody that had spent blood, sweat, and tears generating a certain approach to a problem that we were dealing with. So this guy, very well respected guy, had generated this approach, and I came in. I was a little bit younger than he, and newer to the team, and I had my opinions about that approach. Like I didn't think it was going to work. I had data to show that if we used that approach, we would fail. And so I had, other ideas, A, B, C. Like these are the other things that we can and should pursue because this one's going to fail. But I also realized that if I just did that, what I just said, I would fail because people matter. And it's not always only the data that matters in the success of the work that we're doing or whatever. So I needed to figure out how to get us away from this plan that would doom us all to failure, but to do it in a way that, its owner would not um, be deflated and for me also to be able to be successful in getting these new ideas in. So it was a beautiful yes and because I had to take this existing idea strategy approach that that was in place and say yes. And instead of saying, but this is a disaster, I had to really have that yes. And, let's add in like some of these other approaches that would make it successful. And at the end, we were successful. And it was because we didn't just destroy the existing, infrastructure that wasn't working. We just did a yes. And we took it and we built it. And by the way, I mean, yes and is intended to be like a verbal thing where you're in a meeting and someone said something, and then instead of saying but, which kind of is like a pivot where you say there's something wrong with what you said and it's not what you should be thinking, but yes and is like an acknowledgement, like, yes, I affirm what you said. I hear you. I listened and I heard. And then you say and now you're kind of connecting another idea to that idea. So I kind of like took that premise and kind of turned it into an entire way of doing work, but it's the same idea. It's this idea of a yes, which is affirming and accepting something, and then which is building on it instead of tearing it down.
It's such a powerful tool, especially in improvement and when people are trying to problem solve and they're bringing forward, because there's vulnerability in bringing forward an idea. And not only can you kill by doing the no but, not only can you kill that idea right then and there, but you could prevent and block that person from contributing in the future. So this yes and mindset that you adopt in the habit, I've seen senior leaders when they come in to hear the report out after a team's done a week-long improvement effort, and they've worked hard and they've got their recommendations and they're reporting out. I've seen teams become completely deflated by the no but, and then I've also seen leaders use this yes and you hear it and you can just see that it starts that flywheel from I appreciate the work you just did, I respect the ideas you're proposing, and I'm adding resources and ideas and opening the doors to you taking this idea out of this event and into operations. And from there, hopefully that yes and mindset continues, because when you take ideas out into the real world, they never go the way you think they're going to, right? So they're going to have challenges, and there's got to be continued refinement and collaboration and people adding their ideas to help continue to see the idea forward and evolve it. So yes and kind of gets it going and keeps it going.
Yep. Yeah. And my mentor Dennis would talk about these upward spirals. So I love your analogy of like the flywheel, because like if you turn a flywheel, and think about the upward spiral where one good thing is leading to another good thing, and you're kind of going upwards as a team or in a project or whatever it might be, and upwards being kind of like an arrow up, which is our aim, or people talk about like true north, and having that kind of thing that we are all aspiring towards and working towards. So
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful.
And we could take it one step further, instead of it being like accomplishment oriented. So upward has in getting a desired outcome or goal for your organization or the response you want to see in your metric. You also have upward in regards to individuals realizing their own capabilities, right? So you have Maslow's hierarchy in some ways is another upward. So through this yes and, you're creating psychological safety for them to bring their ideas and share their ideas. And then when they get the yes and, they get the acknowledgement and the opportunity to collaborate. So now they have the sense of belonging, and them in the group, they're collaborating and creating more than they could have ever created individually. So they're realizing their own potentials and they're moving upwards more towards self-actualization.
Yes.
So yes
So
and it doesn't just help achieve goals, it helps people realize their own abilities. It's real
amazing.
powerful.
Yeah. And if you think about that, person achieving their own, that self actualization, the more that people have that, the more that they will be empowered. And that I just feel like you're amplifying the energy of this team or group of individuals. And there's nothing like an individual understanding their own capacity and operating at full capacity, right? Like that is, I think, the beautiful thing to see people really getting to the very, very maximum of their own individual capacity.
That multiplier effect, right,
Yes.
is very significant in your organization's ability to continue to innovate and to take risks that no one else is willing to go after. So, selfishly, from a business perspective, it makes sense to do yes and, but from a personal perspective, it you really get to yourself benefit, but
Hmm.
the people around you, you get to show that you trust them. Yeah, there's just so many good things about yes and.
Yeah.
I'm glad
So
you
many good
unpacked
things.
this one first. How are
And
we going to top yes and with some of these other ones we're
I
going after?
know. Well, so it's a nice segue to a couple of other ones. Um, so one is the effective question, because if you are in an environment, in a situation where you're having a hard time with the yes and, like, you know, maybe we don't seem to be on the same page, we don't seem to see eye to eye on something. Like, effective questions is exactly what it sounds like. It's an opportunity to use your words to question. And why do we question? It's to understand, right? But doing that in an effective way. And so you can't just, there's so many ways you can use questions to shut people down, right? And I think an easy one is like, why did you do that? Like, not an effective question. Like, so trying to be positive with like your intention of asking the question to really seek to understand each other, and also sometimes to use questions with ourselves to understand. So I know I talk about like my mentor Dennis all the time. One of my other good mentors was Dr. Paul McGann. I mentioned him in our previous episode as well. And so he has an effective question which is strikingly similar to the first episode of Daniel Tiger. I don't know if you're familiar with Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger is like Mr. Rogers for this whatever this generation is that we're raising now. So Daniel Tiger has a song where he says like, uh, if something goes bad, turn it around and find something good. Well, Dr. McGann has a question. We called it the McGann effective question. And his question was, what is good about the seemingly bad situation? So both Daniel Tiger and Dr. McGann, they are looking to take a bad situation or something that's, not ideal, right? Like we are disappointed, something is not good at all, and trying to figure out how to deal with that setback or, disappointment and flip it. So, because otherwise it has that potential to create the downward spiral we were talking about a few
Hmm.
minutes ago. So, how do we flip that around and turn it into an upward spiral? So, that's something that I can do to ask, like I said earlier, with myself, but also to understand individuals around me, to seek to understand like why they think something about a certain problem or solution, and really dig. And Tom, I know you're lean folks.
Hmm.
They're like the pros, right? Like they understand effective questions inside and out as a QI tool, and they
Yeah.
understand how to use effective questions to really get to the root. I think people also call them the 5 whys, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Seeking to really understand, like drill down and really understand the why behind something. So this is one of my other kind of favorites in my toolbox.
Is powerful for multiple reasons. Is one, it does help to stop the downward spiral. It's this because that it's easy for things to spin out of control when the team kind of feels everything's unraveling, but also even as an individual, you in your personal or professional life, that downward spiral, it can really consume you. So I had YouTube video or something I found on LinkedIn, and it was someone talking like the best thing you can do in any situation that you don't think's going your way is to take a mental pause and say to yourself, "This is the best thing that could possibly happen." So similar kind of, it's a gut check. It's a, hey, don't let things spin out of control, but stop and assess and ground yourself in reality and take inventory of what's happening. But then, so it's got that mental pause, but then it also allows you to challenge your assumptions and maybe the biases you have to assess, what's going on in a way that is more appropriate and less reactive, right? So it's, you're now present, and now it becomes a dialogue to say, what are you assuming is going on, or what are your concerns, or what are your fears, or what are your past experiences that are maybe hijacking you from preventing you from being effective in dealing with this new challenge we have,
Mhm.
and reframing it from a problem to a challenge to say, actually, there could be something good here. And maybe we've been at this threshold before, but we've chose to retreat instead of walk through.
Mm.
And let's have a dialogue about what's going on and what we can do together in order to continue to pursue the outcome we
Mhm.
want.
Yes, so powerful. And you talked about assumptions. That's a really important like element of this, right? Because if you assume that like somebody that's on your team or somebody that you're working with is not smart, or you assume that they are trying to do something, malicious, that can really, again, like accelerate that downward spiral
It-
because without thinking and without realizing it, that will affect our reactions to that person's ideas, that person's, perspective on things, because we're assuming that they're coming from a bad place, they're doing something on purpose, maliciously, or they're just
Mhm.
not smart, like these are dangerous assumptions. And so I really love the intentionality of fixing our assumptions. And so this is actually another tool. It's called assume positive intent. If you assume positive intent, by the way, just to be, total negative nanny, like even if you're right, like let's say you find out in a year that that person really did have malicious intentions or whatever, it doesn't matter, but you've carried yourself through that year, that journey with integrity and, made the best of the situation that, done everything in your power to get things on that upward spiral. But assuming positive intent is so important. And this also can, like, I think, I'll go out on a limb here and say, like, this can save a lot of marriages. And this can also, like, save a lot of our fights with, like, our children sometimes where, we make assumptions about why, someone's arguing about something. They're not intending to be difficult. Like, that's not their intention. They are dealing with their own emotions and their own challenges. And now I'm thinking about my toddler as I think about this. Same thing with the spouse thing. Like, we all know that we get into these downward spirals sometimes where we start to kind of think the worst of our spouses. But if we can really just take a second and
Mhm.
assume that that person has the best of our intentions and they're just trying to survive just like all of us, this can be so transformational, I think, and kind of letting some of our relationships heal. And again, I know I keep kind of going back and forth, but like work relationships, personal relationships, these are all the things that we deal with every day. And if we
Yeah.
can figure out how to infuse some assumptions of positive intent into those relationships, I think it could really kind of give a fresh little breath of air into those relationships.
I have had a great mentor and role model. We were working as a team of internal consultants, and you would have people miss meetings, or you'd have people resistant to change in your meetings, or you would think you'd have consensus in a meeting and people would go out, and you thought you had agreement, and their behaviors or their action would be opposite of what you thought was agreed upon. So it was really hard to stay in that lane or at that higher level of thinking of the assume positive intent in their behaviors. And it took a consciousness to do that, to realize that that person has unique circumstances. You have to respect, that, and then develop tools to have conversations with them to put yourself in their shoes, right? That's a really powerful part of this, is to practice empathy for that other person and to put yourself in their shoes. You
Yes.
really can't put yourself in their shoes until you connect with them and have conversation with them about where they are, and to be able to understand it. And I think Brene Brown does a good job with this, and she has a saying that I think is helpful, is when you need to sit down and conflict's going to happen because things aren't going the way that you thought, and there's the relationship that you feel is starting to crumble a little bit. She always says that put it on you first, is take accountability for whatever share of
Mhm.
the situation. So if in a meeting people aren't collaborating, or maybe are a little bit resistant, maybe assume it was something you had done, like maybe you failed to communicate the purpose of the meeting, why
Yes.
they were invited to the meeting first. Could you have done something better?
Yeah.
Also, if they leave and aren't following up on action items that you thought the team agreed upon, maybe you didn't effectively communicate it to them in the way that they like to be communicated. So there's a lot of looking inward first. But even after you've done that, and you've gone through that development, sometimes you have to sit down and you have to have that conversation, a difficult or crucial conversation with that
Yeah.
person. And Brene still says to go and start with, what about you? And her tool was the story I'm telling myself. So airing everything that you're feeling, to say, hey, here's the situation and here's the story I'm telling myself about what's going on, is I perceive, like, hey, even if it's saying good morning to a person in the office. So like, you say your boss goes down and says good morning to everyone, and maybe not you, and you have a little bit hurt feelings. And when you go to talk to them about that, you could say, well, the story I'm telling myself today is that I wasn't important to you, or whatever, and open it up. And then from there, that person will say, no, 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 like, oh, thank you for coming to me and telling me that that's how you feel. Like, no, I had to be on a call at 8:15 and I just didn't have enough time to stop by. So
Yeah.
that positive intent, it really does strengthen your relationships, and it also leads to good growth in
Mhm.
relationships, but also personal growth, to say, what can I do better? What's my part of this situation?
Yeah. And you know what I love about that is it's actually one of the other things I had written down here is choice. Like that takes a choice, a very intentional and conscious decision to say, I'm not going to believe that story that I'm not important to this person.
Hmm.
I'm going to challenge that. And so to take that and go to that individual and say, this is how I feel and this is why I feel this way. That is a conscious choice. It's an example of again the power that we have in how we decide to listen to that internal dialogue, monologue, whatever it is, and whether we listen to it or not, and whether we allow that to take us on a downward spiral or not. And I love that. Like there's a turning point there where if you continue to believe the lie, and my assumption is that's a lie, that person did not intend to not say hello to you in the morning. It was just an oversight, whatever. And so if you believe that lie, you've made a choice now, and that choice is going to take you down this path of constantly feeling, unacknowledged, unimportant. And I just feel like that's just going to spew out of you in every meeting that you sit in with this person going
Hmm.
forward. And it can really affect, that like now this has become a toxic environment, not because the environment is toxic, because I have become toxic.
Yeah, that
So
you've made that choice.
yeah, right, exactly, made that choice. So, it's amazing how, like, a choice, which is just me, myself, and I, you know, in that moment that I'm in bed before I get out of bed, like, it can be the quietest of moments, and I decide to make a choice, and that can just turn the whole day around, like
I
it's crazy
I
that
love that.
yeah, like that
It's
silent moment.
there. This is again from my mentor, who we worked together, but we also ran marathons together. So, we would get up early on the coldest days when we didn't want to, and there was times where one of us wouldn't show up or whatnot. So he had read a book, and I forget what the book is, maybe Power of Habits or something. And in there, it's like the 5-second rule of choice. So we all know the 5-second rule of food, but he said, once you think it, if you don't do it within 5 seconds, oftentimes you end up doing the opposite. So, like getting up and running a speed workout or whatever, once you think it, like, okay, it's cold outside and I don't really want to run, but I know I've made this commitment. If you then get up and you do it within 5 seconds, you're actually going to do it. But
Mm,
if you then make that decision not to do it after 5 seconds, like, it pretty much the opportunity has passed. So there's that small window of, there's choice, that's your decision, but then there's action also,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. I love that. I've never heard of that 5-second rule of choice, but it makes sense because I think it's so fleeting, like the time it takes to make the decision and make the choice and make it a positive one. It doesn't take energy. Like I mean, wait, I take that back. It does take energy, but I'm saying it doesn't take anything but a thought. Like, and once you make that choice in your own mind, then the rest is history, as they say. Like,
Hmm.
it's just that 5 second, you know, moment that it takes to say, I will assume positive intent, or I will um, choose to have this conversation. I will be open to listening to what this person might be
Hmm.
going through, and that choice is huge. It's so huge.
Yeah. And I choose to put my shoes on and get out the door. There's a
Yes.
lot of components of your life where you have to make hard choices, or you can, go that different way. And whether it's managing
Yeah.
conflict, or you think of someone and you're like, "You- I know they're going through hardship and it's kind of awkward to talk to them right now, or I don't know what to say." But if you say, but I'm going to do something, I'm going to reach out. So as soon as you
Yes.
make that up, within 5 seconds, find your phone and get on the phone
Yes.
with them, right?
Make
Or
it happen
yeah, or draft that email, or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's decide and then do
And
as
do it.
fast as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Choice can also be like choosing to stand up when, inertia, like I'm thinking of like a rushing river, like river with lots of pressure, lots of force, and all going in this direction. A
Mhm.
choice could be that you decide, I'm not going this way anymore. And you stand up and maybe you turn around and you face the rushing waters. That could also be a choice because sometimes that's what it feels like. Like you're in an interaction or in a situation where it just feels like inertia is just taking you this way.
Yeah.
Choice can make you stand up and say, stop, like pause for a second and turn it around and, not necessarily allow it to just kind of take its own course. And I think that's what happens. Like emotions can feel like that river sometimes, right? Like if it's an emotionally charged conversation or whether this is a meeting or discussion interaction with the spouse or with a toddler, again, you can apply this in whatever it is that you are in, but maybe you feel that rush of a river sometimes. And choice can be how you can stand up and turn that around. So
Yeah.
I think it's really like something that can be applied even when it's hard, even when it's difficult.
I So I'm going to try what you've already done, like, masterfully in each of the topics so far. So you've made this choice, and Oftentimes once we make a choice to become something or to pursue something, we falter because that thing we want to go after, like we put it on a pedestal or we target it in a way in which it's got to be perfect, right? So when you've made a choice, but then you don't pursue it because you start to doubt your ability because maybe that something seems out of reach, or as you pursue it, you want to do it in a way that's so good or so excellent that in the end you're like, you know, here it is. But reality is if you could make the decision to go after it, but be flexible in
Hmm.
what that outcome looks like and be a little
Yes.
bit open-minded about that destination, to allow yourself to actually enjoy the journey as you get there.
Right. Yeah.
That is a that's that's also part of how we use our language or our thoughts to shape the future,
Yes.
and get people to go there with us. Is you need to know where you want to go to be directionally correct, but oftentimes that end result, if you're too tight on it, uh, you start to smother it a little bit, right? Like you
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
creativity out of the picture. So we have one more thing.
This is
Did I
the thing.
segue to it? Do
This
you
is
feel
it.
like I've set it up okay?
Okay, so this is great. So it's the tight loose. I know it sounds weird, but the loose on the how and tight on the what. So what that means is this is great for when you're trying to achieve a specific outcome. You know, you've got a goal, an end. You know what your end goal is. It is so easy to have a very specific perfect straight shot way of getting there. Like to get from point A to point B, you just draw the straight line and this is the right way. And so for people like me, and you've probably taken all these personality tests and everything,
Yeah.
my personality is like very logical. Like to get from here to there, you do this. But um, being loose on the how can be very effective because again it's all about the buy-in that we talked about at the very top of the call, where we were talking about the yes and how powerful that is to allow other people to contribute and like touch the final product and have their ideas incorporated in it so that they can buy into it. It's the same thing here. You can be tight on the what, like you know what needs to be the outcome, the end goal, but we don't all need to get there the same way. It's like you were saying about the journey. Like you might have your own way about doing things as long as you get to the what. You know, you do it Tom's way. Same thing. Like for me, let me do it my way. So be loose on the how. And again, that's like increasing buy-in where people can figure out how they get to that outcome and to that end goal. You're getting them to buy into it. You're getting them to be a part of it, to let them enjoy their own journey to getting there. But again, being tight on the what, because we've got an aim and that's what's unifying us is the what, so we know what it is, the end goal. And so, I mean, I love like watching my toddler get ready because I know how I get ready, like how I put my clothes on and put my socks and shoes on. And I taught her how to get ready, but she
Mhm.
still somehow in her 4 years of life has generated her own way of getting ready. So the what is like I need her to be dressed and in the car. That's what I need. I don't really need to control like in what order she puts on like her clothes and how she does it. So I'm trying this loose tight thing. I'm trying this with my toddler to give her a little bit more independence and space to let her do things how she wants to do it. As long as I know that she will be dressed, you know, appropriately and be in the car, that's what matters.
Yeah. The and then the what. So sometimes it's so far out, it can be daunting in itself. So we were taught the power of threes is paint the picture for where you want to go in three components that kind of add up to. So there's like the beginning first stone you can step on, the second and the third, in kind of spoon feeding it so that people can kind of rationalize the ramp up, right? Like you'd said, like, oh, you kind of, maybe some people see it in a straight line. So disc profile, those people who see it A to B and it's simple, you just have to do this. That oftentimes that is someone who has a D persona type of, dominant.
Mhm.
I don't care how we get there. I'm just going to have a lot of fun with everyone who's going together, and we're going to enjoy each other's company. And then, so those people have a little bit, they have some overlap and commonality, but they also then are a little bit different than the other profiles on the disc, which is the S and the C. So you have steadiness and conscientious. So steadiness wants to get a little bit of data and have some assurance in where they're going and why, so they need to do the math equation to know that it's all going to add up. And the C's kind of want the plan, right? They're the ones who think of things in threes. They're the great bullet points of, you do this, then this, then this. Like they have the recipe
Right.
kind of thing. So in that loose tight thing, you invite everyone to kind of be themselves and contribute. Like how I get things done is by bringing everyone together, but I don't decide. So someone else is going to come in, and their how is, hey, we've circled it all, and this is all the information we have. We cannot do analysis paralysis. We have to make a decision, kind of thing. So yeah, that loose tight invites everyone to kind of bring them best selves to the problem solving approach of
Yeah.
getting to where they all want to go together.
That's beautiful. So everyone's contributing and nobody's perfect. So nobody is
Well,
all
except the
four of those.
eyes. Except
I
the
mean,
eyes.
the eyes are obviously perfect. Okay. So you're clearly an I. I think I might be a D.
I would think I was going to type you as a D or a C, just like how you organize your thoughts and stuff. Like, I feel like you're definitely on that side of the wheel.
I think it depends on the circumstance. It depends on the situation. Yeah.
And
But
it
you're
is,
right. You're right. You're right. Because everyone's got something to contribute. So it could be a matter of personality. It could be a matter of the experience that we've gotten in life, right? Like all the things that we've done and, the experience that's behind us. Um, it could be our, what else can we say? Like so many things about our talents and our skills that some of us have naturally, and some people have studied for years and years to understand and learn certain things. So we are all such colorful palettes, and we all bring so much to the table. So making sure that we see that and leverage that, I think is I love that. I love that DISC.
yeah, and I think when you're loose on the how, as you were saying, you invite people to be the whole range of their uniqueness, right? Versus
Right.
when you're tight on that, like you gotta be the puzzle piece that fits within that bigger picture, but
Right.
instead of, it's a journey, we're going to discover it together, and
Yeah.
as we go we're going to grow, kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. And then of course, like as a leader, that's where your opportunity, being tight on the what, your opportunity is there to create a compelling and motivational what, like the end product. But that still doesn't mean, being tight on the what still doesn't mean that you don't practice yes and,
Mhm.
right? Like you could still use yes and in being tight on the what, because we can be tight on the what but still find ways to get different flavors into that what, so that it increases everyone's buy-in and increases motivation, and like you said, really leverages everyone on the team to be on that ship and be ready with, we have to generally agree to where we're sailing.
Yeah. Oh man. All right, so you just brought it all back. So we were back to where we started with yes and I've enjoyed this conversation with you. Just to recap it, we showcased episode 40. We encourage people to go check that out, and that's really where we dove deeper into the speech acts. There's 4 speech acts, and these that we talked about today, these 5 elements of yes and effective questioning, assuming positive intent, giving choice or the power of choice, and then loose tight. Those are complementary leadership mindsets or tools or behaviors that continue to focus in on how we think, how we speak, how we use our language to motivate, connect, and drive collaboration to create a future that probably couldn't have existed had we not used those tools or put it out there. And oh man, I'm so glad we did a bonus episode on this. This was so much fun.
Yeah. And I love too that these are tools that I can use everywhere. Like it's not work specific and it's not like, specific to anything. Like you can use this in your workplace, but you can also use this at home. If one person can make a difference, that one person can be me, and it can be in how I raise my children. It can be through my marriage, and it can be through my work as well.
What a way to make an impact. Oh man. So I know in episode 40, as we closed out, you aired your contact information and how to get a hold of you. But I want to revisit that. What are the best ways for individuals to connect with you, Mary?
All right, you guys can look me up on LinkedIn. Last name is Andrawis, Andrawis. So look me up on LinkedIn, or if you're interested, you can check out my website. It's serafinahealth.com, and that's Serafina with an F, like in Frank.
Thank you so much for being my guest on this bonus episode and also on episode 40. It was a blast.
It was a blast. I really appreciate it.